Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. It is the draft game day episode, Saturday midday, joined by Anthony. Big day of college football so far. Ironically, and as Anthony and I were talking, he and I watched nearly the same games. That wasn't planned. But Anthony, what was your college football schedule this morning? Which games did you happen to see?
Yeah, so I started with Oregon Northwestern. I kind of wanted to get a good look at Dante Moore. I hadn't really watched him yet this season, and everybody's been telling me how great he's looked. So I watched some Oregon, and then Clemson Georgia Tech quickly became the more interesting game to watch as just a football game. So I slowly but surely gravitated toward that and watched pretty much like the whole second half of that game. And then threw in a little, I quick checked on Alabama. They kicked the crap out of Wisconsin. And then I quick checked Auburn and they kicked the crap out of South Alabama. So, but yeah, Clemson, Georgia Tech was definitely the game of the day so far.
Yeah, so I was watching the same games. Sadiq for Oregon to me is for real.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was impressed. I saw him moving players off their mark in the running game. A couple of pancake blocks. I saw some very impressive athleticism catching the ball. So, and Dante Moore, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think for Sadiq, I think the blocking has really what's been like the most impressive part. Cause I think we all could see the athleticism, like when you watched him last year, like it was in flashes, but you saw like, oh, he's flashing some high end athleticism. But for a guy who's listed at 6'3", 245, the way that he's able to block, like you said, like moving people in the run game, and being able to get out in space and finish blocks, like it's pretty awesome to watch. So yeah, I am slowly but surely getting on the Kenyon Sadiq bandwagon. I've seen some say top 10 player, and I'm not gonna like get quite there yet, but he is definitely a player that I think is going to be in first round talks by the time we get to the end of the year.
Yeah, so that was fun. And then the Clemson game was a good game. Regardless of, let's say, whatever the hype was around Clemson, the Clemson Georgia Tech game, Haynes King, like, you have my attention. He's a really good football player. He may not be NFL or draft, like high draft stock caliber, but Georgia Tech impressed me. That was a really good performance by that entire team.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think Georgia Tech is going to be a very fun, competitive team this year. Not maybe necessarily like, national title contender, but they have an identity. They have a belief in themselves, and they've got a quarterback that can run the offense effectively in Haynes King. And I agree with you. I don't think he's necessarily like a, top 100 draft pick, but he can keep this team in football games. He knows how to run effectively, but he can also make throws when he has to make them. You saw it in the fourth quarter. He was delivering on quick passes, stretching the ball down the field. And then he had like, I think a couple like 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2 carries where, he fakes the pitch and then just runs inside. And credit to the Georgia Tech offensive line, because they were making holes for Haynes King to be able to, find and then get the first down. So they also looked very good against a Clemson defense that I think has, to say the least, I think has underwhelmed in these first few weeks, mainly the last 2 weeks, I would say. But it's been sort of disappointing what we've seen from Clemson, I think.
Yeah, and so there's two other things that I saw with Georgia Tech. So first of all, Jamal Haynes, he is him competing for RB1, RB2, RB3, maybe.
Maybe. I don't. Well, you know what? Honestly, because the problem is if not him, who? Like, I feel like all the RB1 candidates are. We still got to see Jeremiah Love tonight, but he didn't look great week 1. Nick Singleton Penn State hasn't really played anybody that I've cared about, so I honestly don't even know how he's doing so far. Mekhi Hughes is completely off the radar. So yeah, a guy like Jamal Haynes, who has been productive and playing well, maybe he does enter that conversation. I don't know if I'm there yet, but yeah, I'll say the running back rankings feel incredibly wide open right now. I don't think there's any one running back that you would point to and be like, yep, he's the guy. Like it is very just, pick your flavor, see who's balled out, in these first couple weeks, but nobody's really like separated themselves, I don't think, which makes it, all the more interesting.
Yeah. So ultimately for Georgia Tech, there's a person named Haynes running the ball, whether it's quarterback Haynes King or running back Jamal Haynes. Don't get your Haynes mixed up, but both of them showed out. Now, I have another question for you on Georgia Tech. Did you scout Eric Rivers during the summer?
I did, yes.
Did you know he could throw? Was there anything in the scouting report that said that?
I feel like I do remember. I feel like FIU did. Let me see if I have a note on it. I feel like I might have remembered like a trick play that they did with him at FIU.
So wide receiver Eric Rivers of Georgia Tech threw a pass on a reverse 2-point conversion. So that's like one of those little things you tuck in the back of a scouting report, because that's a gadget player, right, that you could use. And I know that we previewed Clemson Georgia Tech last night at 9. Neither of those two podcasters were high on Eric Rivers, but there are other draft professors that really like him. How much do you like Eric Rivers?
So coming into the year, and honestly, it's probably not really that different now. He was like a late day 2, I'll say mid to late day 2 guy for me. He is one of these just, undersized, but super fast, dynamic playmakers, put the ball in their hands, and they can make explosive plays. He had, in addition to the size concerns, he's 5'11", 175, which isn't ideal. But, he had, and he had the similar issues that you have at that size. He's struggling in traffic and can get, out physicaled by bigger corners. He also had a lot of drops. He had like 7 drops in 2024. So he needed to clean that up. But yeah, I think that's actually a pretty apt comment by Draft of the Future. I think it is a lot of guys that look kind of just like wide receiver 2s at best. Rivers, I would even probably say, is maybe like a wide receiver 3 kind of player, just because you probably would primarily line him up only in the slot. But he's a fun player, and there's a lot of these, like, I'm watching Georgia, Tennessee right now. Zachariah Branch is another one of those kinds of players. Eric Singleton is on Georgia Tech, now is at Auburn. He's another one of these players. There's a lot of these like quick and fast, undersized receivers that can make plays with the ball in their hand, but it's just kind of a matter of getting them the ball and whether you have to, as an offense, manufacture touches for them, or you trust them enough to throw the ball down the field to them. That's kind of what will separate them, I think.
Yeah, and to me, day 2 is where I say high. So if you're day 2 for Eric Rivers, to me, that means you're high on him. If you're late day 3, he's just another guy. That would be somebody that's, let's say, low on him. So that's where that comment came from me. I don't want to make it sound like high was Eric Rivers going in the top 50. It was, do you take him on day 2 as a slot receiver that you could use as either a wide receiver 2 or a wide receiver 3? Or is he a wide receiver you put in the depth chart who may or may not dress on Sundays, kind of thing? So, Ryan Sparks, it's good to see you in the chat here. Thank you for sharing your eval on Eric Rivers. Okay, so trying to think of other players. I didn't see Saka stand out when Northwestern played Oregon. Did you see anything different?
I didn't. I would want to go back and watch all 22 before I say like he had a bad game. But no, he didn't like pop off pop off the screen. I will shout out here we go. Mateo Uiagalelei. That's my attempt.
Yep.
He had a good game. He had a really cool spin sack. I don't remember. Now I don't remember if it was against Tiernan or if it was on the other side. It might have been on the other side. But he had an impressive sack, and he looked pretty good in this game. I do remember him being like a solid player this whole game. So he's somebody I think I'll want to go back and see. I had a top 50 grade on him coming into the year. So it was good to see him kind of stand out a bit against Northwestern, which is actually like a pretty good, as bad as Northwestern is, their offensive line is actually like one of the better parts of their team. So.
Yeah, so I saw Saka make a couple of tackles. I definitely Oregon did have a couple of defensive standouts, right? So, okay. It was it's not Uiagalelei. How did you say it?
I went with Uiagalelei. Is what I said.
Uiagalelei.
I think it's ooh. I think it's a ooh sound. And then it's Lele, I think. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But
and then the Oregon center fielder returned an interception for a touchdown. So
that's right, Bryce. I should have shouted him out.
Yep. So that's Bryce Botcher, the linebacker for Oregon, caught a tipped pass and returned it to the house. And I know coming out of the summer, the question was, what's he going to look like because he's dedicated himself to football? Because he was a baseball player prior to this summer. So that was definitely a play that should be stood out. I think that's going to be called out when we do scouting reports on the linebacker class starting actually in about 6 weeks, I think. So that was something that stood out. And then go ahead.
No, I was just going to say he had that interception, and then he almost had another interception where the ball got tipped and he was like running back. He tried to make like a diving catch. It looked like his arm might have hit somebody's helmet. Like there was a guy on the ground and it might have like hit his arm as he was trying to catch it. So he wasn't able to grab it. But I liked him over the summer. I heard some, a lot of the chatter I saw was like people weren't really high on him. I had him as a top 100 player. I thought he was really fun and athletic, and I liked that baseball background that he brought to the table. And like you said, it was a question of, is he going to pursue football and be committed to it? But I think if he is, and I don't have a reason to believe he's not, I think he could actually be a pretty good, kind of like middle of the field, probably like a 3-4 middle linebacker kind of guy. I was a fan of his before, and this game kind of just like cemented it.
And at minimum, he has a floor as an athlete that's going to be able to cover kicks and play special teams.
Yep.
Right. So even if you're taking him as a linebacker in round 6 or 7, he's going to be able to make the 53. He's going to be able to dress on Sundays. And whether that type of player evolves into a starting NFL linebacker is one discussion. But if you can dress on Sundays, ultimately that's the goal. Right. Like when you're looking at a linebacker, at least to me, I'm always of the opinion you draft a linebacker every year so that you have your special teams players on rookie deals. And then when they hit year 4, you should have already drafted another linebacker the previous year and the previous year that's replacing them. And that's just kind of the lifeblood of your special teams unit. So that being said, so Anthony, I was watching the Georgia game before we went live. I saw Zachariah Branch with a really good catch on a slant, and he was about this much from taking that slant to the house. Somebody made a shoestring tackle. What game were you watching right before we went live?
I have Georgia Tennessee on. Literally, I'm looking at you, and then like behind you is Georgia Tennessee. And I don't know. I guess you might have missed it because Zachariah Branch did actually take a pass to the house. It wasn't like a particularly amazing catch. I think it was just like a simple out route, but he showed that speed and explosiveness that you would have seen if he wasn't tackled on that other play. So yeah, both these offenses are churning out the big plays, which is like completely the opposite of what I thought this game was going to be. I thought this was going to be like 7-7 by the time we got to this point in the second quarter, and it is far from that. So hell of a game we're watching here, though. I'm into it.
Yeah, so Georgia, Tennessee, what I saw up to the point that we went live, I think Gunnar Stockton looks okay, but I've seen the pressure get to him.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because he had at least one pass that was deflected. He was hurried at least 2 other times that I saw, and that was only through the first quarter. So that's something that was sticking out. And then I started asking myself, like, because I was looking up Gunnar Stockton, right? So he is, as best I can tell, he's a redshirt junior. Dante Moore is a redshirt junior as well, right? They're the same year.
Yes, I think. Or is he a soft? Now, hold on. Now I'm doubting myself.
Well, right. So I'll filibuster while you look it up. But the reason why I was asking is, a lot of people are saying, well, Dante Moore could declare, but I haven't heard anybody saying Gunnar Stockton could declare, but I think they're the same year. That was going to be. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so Dante Moore is a redshirt sophomore. Gunnar Stockton is a redshirt junior.
Right.
So yeah, they both in theory could stay for another year. Yes.
So they both could stay for another year, but they could actually both declare.
That's also true. Yes.
Right, but I don't hear anybody saying Gunnar Stockton should declare. But I in the Draft Professor chat, people are saying, should Dante Moore stay in school and compete with the Arch Mannings and Lenora Sellers next year, or DJ Lagway next year, or should he come out this year? That was a discussion that we were having while the games were being played. You want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, well, so I think the problem with Gunnar Stockton is I don't think he's that great. So there's really no reason for him to declare unless like we see something really magical here in these next few weeks. But it never struck me as somebody that would be like a high end draft prospect. Whereas Moore and I literally I tweeted on X yes, they have not. Oregon has not played anyone that I would consider top competition that I would use when I go and eval Dante Moore at the end of the year and I give a final grade or whatever. I am not going to use any of these games probably when I do that eval, just because there's really not too much I can glean from these kinds of just bad defenses. But that said, what you have seen from Dante Moore against these bad defenses is you still see good accuracy, good poise in the pocket, the confidence to push the ball down the field. He's not afraid to take some chances with his arm and make some tight window throws. That one rollout throw that he had, he hikes the ball, rolls to his right, and as he's rolling, delivers just a stripe to, I don't even remember who caught the ball, but delivers a stripe right on the sideline where only the receiver can catch it, but also over a defender and also in a position where the receiver can like pretty easily stay in bounds and make the catch. Like it was so perfectly placed. And like that kind of thing translates no matter who you're playing against. So if Dante Moore can do that and do that for a whole season against the Penn States and the Ohio States and the Michigans, and then if they get to the playoff, if he does that in the playoff, like there has to be at least a conversation of he's probably a top 5 pick. Why would you not, you're not going to get your draft stock any higher if you play like that. Why wait? So it's early. It's very early still. I'm not sitting here declaring Dante Moore as a top 5 player in the draft, but you have to like the signs. So I do think if you're a Dante Moore fan, you might expect him to leave if he keeps playing like this.
Okay. So flipping back to Georgia, and we were talking about, like, because we started talking about Stockton Moore the same year, right? But flipping back to Georgia specifically, and I was looking for Joshua Josephs, and in the first quarter that I watched, he was invisible. And that was something that we were talking about in the game preview yesterday with James Foster and Sam Teets. Did you see anything out of Joshua Josephs, the edge from Tennessee, in the first quarter of the Georgia game?
Nothing to stand out. It does feel like, I mean, I kind of alluded to it before. This has kind of just been like an offensive showcase. Both offenses are moving the ball pretty well and controlling their respective lines of scrimmage. So no, I don't think Joseph's, I have, again, he hasn't popped off the screen in any capacity. I do agree, one of the things that was brought up in the chat, because this was, we were having a conversation about Peter Woods and the Clemson defensive line. Trench players, you generally want to go back and watch their film. You want to do it with every player, but more so with them because it's a lot easier to miss the things that they do well or don't do well. When you're just watching a game, unless Joshua Josephs like has a sack or gets in and forces a fumble or like does some great play. You may not catch like, oh, well, he's still creating pressure. He's still, beating his blocker or whatever. So I don't, people should like go back and watch particularly trench players to see how they did. And if they actually didn't play well and that's why you didn't notice them, or if just, a lot of these offenses are throwing the ball super, super quick. They don't really have the time to even make a play. So I'm not saying Joshua Josephs is playing bad or not, but if you are a Tennessee fan, you probably would have hoped by now that he would have made some kind of big sack or something, because Georgia's offense looks pretty comfortable more or less. So,
yep. And then on Tennessee, we need to talk about Chris Brazel, the wide receiver.
We do. Yes, we do.
He was running a post pattern from the right side of the formation across to the left. He was running to the left. The ball got thrown late to the point where he overran the spot where it was thrown to. So he had to kind of turn and catch the ball over his right shoulder. Yeah, I have that right. That was an incredible catch. The defender interfered with him. Still caught the ball 70 whatever yards to the house. Mm-hmm. Where was Chris Brazel on your summer scouting board?
I hadn't even watched him for summer scouting. I knew of him. I knew, I was aware of him. I didn't really have high expectations for the Tennessee offense, and I didn't really know what to get from Joey Aguilar. So I was kind of like, I'll play a little wait and see game with the Volunteers.
You waited and you saw.
He's been super impressive. That touchdown you talked about, beats his man, and also too, like, a lot of people are getting excited about Joey Aguilar, but like Brazel had to wait for that ball like that. Like he had to stand there like almost like a punt return and then had to make the jump, got interfered, as you said, and then still had the body control and strength to catch the ball and then go run however many yards after that. So that was great. And then the other touchdown, it was sort of similar. He runs it's a post route, and to Aguilar's credit, he does a great job of freezing the safety, KJ Bolden. Bolden just doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what to cover. So Brazel runs this post route, beats his corner that was on him, and creates the separation, and then just runs behind KJ Bolden, and Aguilar delivers a beautiful, pass over the middle, to where Brazel, anticipating where Brazel's going to get to, and then Brazel still has the, body control. I think he had to adjust a bit, but he makes the catch for the touchdown. So like two really it's one thing to have big stats and big numbers, but like both of those touchdown catches were like impressive touchdown catches for what Brazel had to do to make the play. So I am very interested now. And I'm always a fan of big receivers. I think he's listed at like 6'5", 200 pounds. So I'm very interested. I'm going to go back and I'm going to give him a proper look because he deserves it after this game. Very, very interesting player. It's probably the player in this game that has improved his draft stock the most just by watching it at this point.
Yeah, and like real soon, if it hasn't already, the Miami South Florida game is about to kick off.
They're in the first quarter now.
Are the players that you're looking at in that game primarily Miami? Are you looking at anybody in South Florida?
It's primarily Miami. I talked about this
yesterday.
Did I talk about it yesterday? Yeah, I had to have been. Yeah. I talked about it yesterday where like Byron Brown is, an interesting case study. I think most people still don't really see him as anything more than like maybe a day 3 developmental kind of player, but he's just so intriguing physically and so intriguing from a traits perspective that you almost kind of have to give him some sort of evaluation. I just flipped on the game and Miami just scored another touchdown. So they're up 14-0. So that doesn't necessarily bode well for how Byron Brown is doing right now. But yeah, I'm mostly intrigued by, if Miami like is for real, which kind of seems like they are, or if the week 1 was a bit of a fluke. But right now they look pretty impressive from the 25 seconds I've watched of the game.
Okay, and then also later on tonight we have Texas A&M Notre Dame. So I think it's the second straight week that you and I have talked about Notre Dame in a late game, right? Because I thought that was what we was Notre Dame Miami last week, or was it 2 weeks ago?
It was 2 weeks ago, but they were a Sunday night game, or no, Saturday night game. Yeah. But yeah, so this is now Notre Dame's second night game of the season.
Yeah, so in that Notre Dame Texas A&M game, a couple of players. So Cassius Howell on one drive had more sacks than Anthony's favorite Texas A&M edge, Shamar Stewart, had in the entire season last year.
Who I would like to point out, now everybody says, oh, Shamar Stewart can win Rookie of the Year. I really tried to tell you guys. You didn't want to listen to me, but it's fine. But yes, no, Cassius Howell looked damn impressive on that drive, and he's looked good all year. I forget who, I don't remember who they played week 1. But he's been very good in the 2 games that they've played. This is going to be like the first actual competition that he's probably going to see this year. But it was also alluded to last night, like Notre Dame's offensive line looked really bad against Miami. So maybe this isn't such a great unit as it usually is. So, if you're Texas A&M, you're probably hoping that Cassius Howell has another monster game again. If you're Notre Dame, you're hoping that your tackles figure it out. Anthony Knapp and Emil Wagner just, again, looked so bad against Miami. So, you hope for them. They can protect CJ Carr and he can, have time to get the ball out and actually push the ball downfield instead of throw a bunch of screens like he did against Miami. So, and obviously too, just like getting Jeremiah Love like involved and like actually like, is he, I think I tweeted when the Miami game was happening, like, I don't know if it's a matter of he wasn't 100% yet, or they just wanted to save him a little bit, or they didn't, or they really just wanted to incorporate Jadarian Price more. I don't know. But the fact Jeremiah Love, I think, only had like 10 carries or like it wasn't that many, like when he was supposed to be like easy RB1 potential top 10 player in the draft, and like feature him, let him be the offense. Like if he's that good, let him be this explosive dynamic playmaker. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens if he gets more involved against Texas A&M, and if they're able to slow him down. That'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, and in the Notre Dame Texas A&M game, there's several wide receivers that are draft eligible, including KC Concepcion from Texas A&M, Jaden Greathouse from Notre Dame, as well as Malachi Fields from Notre Dame are both draft eligible. Something to look at in those games, as well as there's two really good linebackers, Drake Bowen from Notre Dame, Tareen York from Texas A&M. So I think when we did that game preview, I think that podcast had like 32 players that are draft eligible playing in the game tonight. So that's if you're a fan of the NFL draft and you want to get familiar with some names, I would say the Texas A&M Notre Dame game is a must watch from a draft perspective. Any other games other than the Miami game and the Notre Dame Texas A&M game that you have your eye on tonight?
LSU Florida is probably the other big one. Obviously Florida coming off that loss to South Florida, and LSU, who has arguably looked like the best team in college football this year. There's plenty of talent on both sides. If I'm not mistaken, I think this will be Caleb Banks' first game. He's been out for the first 2 games of the year. So we'll finally get to see, for me, he was I think 6th or 7th on my board coming into the year. So that'll be interesting to watch. Byron Brown just had a hell of a throw against Miami. But yeah, and obviously Mansour Delane has been a revelation for LSU, the corner. He has all the makings of being corner one if he keeps playing like he did against Clemson. It was a hell of a performance. So that'll be interesting to watch. And obviously, the quarterbacks, Lagway will be next year, but he's kind of been underwhelming so far in the first 2 games. So we'll see if he can kind of find himself a bit. And Garrett Nussmeier, some are already anointing him QB1. I'm not there yet, but we'll see if he can handle, again, now with Caleb Banks and Tyreek Sapp and, a pretty strong Florida front if he's able to deal with that.
Okay, well, why don't you let everybody know kind of who you are, how they can find you? We can get back to watching some college football. I can get to my son's cross-country night meet. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can find me at Anthony_Russo97 on X. I'm tweeting all sorts of college football, drafts, NFL, Jets misery posts. So you can find all that there. And you can find me. I got a Substack. I didn't have a chance to post anything yesterday, but I will have my Sunday morning quarterback post out tomorrow, recapping some of these games. And stuff that I wanted to highlight from each of them. And of course I'll be here Friday nights and Saturday evenings, doing again, we got game previews every Friday. Next week is Florida, Miami, I think, for us on Friday. Yes. So that'll be a very interesting preview to do. And yeah, and I'll be here all season long doing some fun stuff.
Well, I love having you here. So you can follow the channel at NFL Draft Fanatic, no Iron Fanatic. You can follow on X, YouTube, or Spotify. So what we do here is daily draft content. Anthony is one of 24 podcasters at the Draft Professor that shows up one day a week. And when you have 24 people that show up one day a week, you get 2 podcasts, Monday through Friday, 7 p.m., 9 p.m. Eastern. Then Saturdays, it's Anthony and me and whoever chooses to join us. During the high school cross-country season, we're in the afternoon. Once my son's cross-country season ends, we go at 10 a.m. Saturday mornings, and we've been doing that time slot for close to a year. And then we have a show on Sunday nights with Brian Maffey as well. So from that standpoint, that daily draft content every day up until the NFL draft in April. We have 94 podcasters that fill those 24 regular daily podcast spots. And as Anthony said, you can find a lot of us on Twitter. We're tweeting out during the games. We're tweeting out during the week, and things of that nature. You'll see our mock drafts. You can participate in our mock drafts. We engage with our followers quite a bit. A significant amount of that engagement is either on YouTube or on Twitter. So with that being said, we are going to close the podcast down. Please enjoy your college football today on Saturday. Please have a great weekend. We'll have some Twitter content during the NFL games on Sunday. But for Anthony, me, the 94 podcasters at the Draft Professor, thank you for watching, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you on a podcast again on Monday.